Hi, I'm Mike Hogue from Lily House, and today I'm going to be talking about the kind of no-till systems that we use here. So, it's a little bit different than the kind of no-till systems you've seen probably in other places online, such as just using deep wood chips, and that works fine. We do a lot of that here, but we have a system that's more about using the plants that we can grow in place and using the most appropriate mulches for the crop that we're growing. So we really mix it up, use about 5 or 6 different kinds of no-till, all integrated together into a system that really matches our pattern of behavior in the garden. So in a way, we're really part of the mulching system. And one of the big things that we do here is really this dynamic mixed polyculture type system with tight inner plantings. In other words, it's dynamic because what we're growing and how we manage changes over time. It's mixed because it's both perennials and annuals growing in together. And polyculture because we grow all of these different crops in together in the same place. And the main thing we're going for is to get to this kind of system where the only work we're doing is eating from the garden. So we go out and we harvest one thing, pull that, and put something in its place right afterwards. So with that kind of system, there's really never room for weeds. This gives us a good idea of what our beds are looking like this time of year. You see there's a lot of density going on, a lot of tight plantings of things that we're going to be thinning out to make room for more. Here's a close-up into one of our beds where I've already harvested a bunch of garlic and onions for the season and started some annuals, also some self-sowers. And you can see the kind of deep mulch we build up over the course of a season. You won't often catch me with a shovel in our garden because with this kind of deep mulch system all the time, I just don't need it to dig most of our root crops. But here I want to transplant out a couple of these blood vein sorrels. There's a clump of them that is divided by itself, so I'm going to thin that out and probably remove them all. Get some mulch down there and plant in something as an annual a little bit later in the season. And now I'm going to go around and pull out a few garlics here. They're crowding in around this sorrel that's self-sown here. You also notice a lot of daffodils in this garden. I really love them as a placeholder plant in the garden. They're ephemerals, so once the dry season kicks in, they're really not competing with anything anymore. Oh, look, those are the garlic. So as you see, I can usually just pull things out like this with my hands. I usually don't carry around a trowel or a shovel or anything to work in our garden. Our soils are such that even with that comfrey right there, when I want to go to pull it, I have maybe a good 70% chance I'll be able to pull that comfrey out and get a couple feet of root just by giving it a wiggle and a pull from the top. Okay, here's a look into another one of our beds that has had really deep mulch. Now it's got primarily fennel, garlic, onions, some sorrel, some self-sown lettuces that have come in there. So this is going to be a great spot because it's still pretty loose and not tight plantings at all for me to plug in some shade-loving annual plugs later. And here you see some spots of clearing with bare soil to plant in annuals. I didn't dig these, I just harvested, and this was the bare soil. Alright, so there you have it. So now that you've got the main idea, let's take it really advanced. Because the real promise of this kind of system is that I can make it so that all of my garden prep for the whole season is just eating and harvesting and selling plants and selling food. I have to have a well-designed system so that it creates stability over time and I can get consistent, stable harvests. That's the whole key. So another aspect of making that work well is that the ideal perfect garden is going to grow exactly the right amount of things that I can use as I harvest and plant in new things. So let's take a look around and see how I feel about some of the ground covers that I have going on here just in our front garden. So this is one of the guilds that I'm happiest with because it has this oregano edging as a fortress plant. And then beyond that, we have a mix of various alliums, some nitrogen fixers, and then marshmallow and valerian as two major crop plants. There's also good King Henry, a variety of alliums in there, asparagus, and potatoes, and a couple of other goodies in there too. So this one works pretty well. Ultimately, I think I could use a little bit less valerian over time since I'm not eating a ton of that. I would like to have the Dame's Rocket in there, be more varieties that are hairless. So that one right there is hairless. That's going to be really good to eat. Chives I can always harvest more of. And I'd love to have more marshmallow. I really use a lot of marshmallow through the season, so encouraging a little bit more of that will be good. I think I have a good market now for the valerian, so hopefully we'll get some of that out, get it sold, get it used, give it away as gifts. And this will be a pretty ideal little fruit tree guild. So with a couple of our main Zone 1 production beds, these have a lot of garlic and onions in them just a little while ago. We've been eating a lot of garlic and onions to thin them out to make room for some of our annual crops for the season. These are also some perennial leeks in there. So these are really crops that I just can't have too many of. Garlic in particular is so welcome in this space because it's so easy to pull out. It's shallow rooting, really grown like this. It's not a super heavy feeder. You're not waiting all season to harden it off. The fronds can be thrown in and to make a compost tea or to make a tea that is also repellent to a lot of our pests. So I don't use a ton of that, but I find that having the garlic around really does reduce a lot of our pests in the garden. So with it being so multi-use as a medicinal, as a storage crop, as a nice sales crop, just by thinning it over the course of the season, I can usually get some really nice saleable sized garlics without having to ever plant garlic in the last few years. I'm just not as anti-grass as a lot of gardeners are. Looking in here, you can see grasses are a major part of our ecosystem because we've got an open savanna prairie type coverage here, and grasses are a normal part of that ecosystem. They're also a great place to encourage earthworms that till the soil, and you need long grasses like this to have fireflies, and fireflies are great garden predators too that actually in their larval stage eat slugs. So what you see here is another kind of mulching system we use for no-till, which is we slash a lot of these grasses in place, and you can see that all through here. We're going to plant in various crops right into these mulches here in these little edible prairie systems. And on top of that, you can see, about 4 or 5 different kinds of perennial alliums are growing in here. Turkish rocket, some more comfrey, sorrel, blood vein sorrel, sheep sorrel, crones, camas. There's really just a lot going on here that's edible and useful to us. So all of this becomes an interaction with nature, just figuring it out as we go, tweaking, getting it right, using a little bit less of this over time and a little bit more of that, and over time hopefully we'll end up with a system that has absolute maximum stability over the long term, maximum harvest and yields, maximum value to me and to our family, and the minimum amount of work.